What's happening?
You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the capitalist corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the capitalist corner.
That's right, baby. We are your island in a sea of irrationality. Happy hump day, everybody. Welcome to the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and the vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who, as you know, if you are frequent listeners to the show, also hosts his own show, The Rational Egoist. If you're new to the show, you should know what The Rational Egoist is, what it does, and you should be, well, what it does is increase your brain power. But Michael, tell us what's going on with The Rational Egoist before we go on to the crazy news today.
Same as yesterday. I've got a bunch of episodes in the queue that they're not ready to be released yet because my producer is on a trip. But when she gets back, we're going to start releasing them. Got a bunch of good ones, got some good ones coming up. And of course, we got our show that's going to be coming up soon. So I'm very excited about all of it. Ready to rock and roll, ready to get into it today. Hopefully you don't get my dander up too much. I'd like to.
I have a feeling your dander is going to be flying all over the place today. That's right, folks. Next week, we're going to start our intersection of philosophy and psychology. We're going to start with our own personal stories, too, so that you understand where we are, where we're coming from and how philosophy affected our own particular lives. I think that could be very helpful to folks out there.
I think we need a good name for the show. I like the intersection as a subtitle, but I want a popping title for the show.
Anybody in the comments who can come up with a serious, and don't bust our balls, but a serious title for that new show, please. Your comments are welcome. We will steal them from you. I'm sorry. We'll give you credit if you want to, but you're not going to get any monetary compensation. Speaking of monetary compensation, I do have to say that we are not affiliated with the American Capitalist Party. The show is not affiliated with them. Although we will be talking in terms of folks who are supportive of the American Capitalist Party policies. What we say here is our own opinion, and we're liable to have some differences today, given the news cycle. And those are always exciting to me, folks, because you get to see that objectivists and capitalists who are primarily ideologically aligned can disagree on particulars. Now, what happens during that time? Well, we fight. No, we usually discuss, and then one or the other person persuades someone to come over to their side. That's the way civil society works, folks. That's subordinating right to might, right? That's making reason our primary means of communicating with each other and understanding the truth. Persuasion is an aspect of civilization, folks. Fighting, hurting each other, getting physical with one another are not aspects of civilization. Mind in action is one of our first thoughts, mind in action. It's a very interesting one, Race. We're going to keep that in mind. So we got a pretty crazy news cycle today, folks. And I'm assuming Michael wants to take probably the biggest thing that's affecting the news cycle today, which is the murder of that poor Ukrainian immigrant who escaped the war in Ukraine, I think with her mother and I think another sibling, only to be murdered on a light rail in Charlotte, North Carolina, by an insane human being, a person who is already diagnosed as a schizophrenic with a very long record of violence. And of course, the right is using this as a springboard from many different dimensions for its tough on crime policy, which we've already seen what that means for the Trump administration. The tough on crime policy means sending National Guard troops to quote unquote high crime areas, even if those labeled high crime areas are not necessarily the high crime areas that the Trump administration is making them appear. But they are sending these folks in there with the intent of squashing crime, and they're using this particular horrific event, folks. It's an event that has been sticking with me for days, ever since it happened, and ever since I've seen the video and pieces of the aftermath of what this man did to her. I'm just so saddened and so disheartened, not just by the senselessness of the crime, but by the lack of any witness, anybody else on the train to come forward and really help the girl in some way. Now, there's a part of me, Michael, that comes from objectivism that understands that, well, you're not morally obligated to do that, particularly if you don't have a skill set that can deal with the problem that's in front of you. I mean, you're not, it's not your job to sacrifice your life for somebody else, particularly a stranger. But there, there is that part of that sheepdog part of me that's like, well, we are in this together, and the way you can help deter crimes is if criminals understand that there's going to be serious repercussions from the crowd themselves. There's also the bystander effect. I want to talk about that a little bit, Michael, from my own experience. One day I was walking home from the library. Right, I'd been doing a bunch of studying. It was 2:00 in the afternoon, I think on a weekday. I parked on the street. This is in Hollywood, and I was walking towards my apartment, a load of books under my right hand. And as I'm sort of crossing towards the lobby of my apartment, I hear screaming. But in the middle of the day, you don't put screaming together with crime being committed. It sounded, your mind sort of juxtaposes the sensory elements and says it must be kids playing on a playground or kids nearby, which is exactly what sort of went through my head. But as I reached the door of my lobby, a truck stopped in the intersection, rolled down the window. A woman was in the truck, and she said, "He's raping her." Okay, this was a shock to me. I turned around the side of the building where the truck went, and the truck stopped in front of the crime that was being committed in front of us. I saw a gang type member, clearly under the influence of drugs, on top of a woman who happened to be Hispanic. It looked like she was a nanny who was walking two children and two babies, two infants in a stroller. And as I came to the edge of the truck, the back end of the truck, I noticed that there were people watching from the balconies. People watching from the balconies, not screaming, not shouting, just simply watching what was happening. I yelled up at them to call the police. They instantly went into action and ran inside to apparently call the police. As I was walking towards the event, I yelled at the guy that the police were coming, and he got up and said, "Fuck the police," started walking around the car towards me. Now I'm like, dude, you just want to back off? The police are going to be here any second. You don't want to make this anything worse than it is. He kept walking to me. Fuck the police. I thought he had a gun. I didn't know what he was going to pull out in front of me. But unfortunately, he got a little too close. He got close enough to be within arm's reach of me, and I smacked him in the mouth and knocked him unconscious. Then the police came and dragged him off the side of the road. He was unconscious for about 5 or 10 minutes. The police came, dragged him off the side of the road. But the bystander effect is real, folks. Oftentimes, you don't know exactly what is happening in front of you. It happens so fast. A blitz attack like that happens so fast, you can't quite process the reality of what's happened in front of you. But also, there is the added element that the man had a knife. And knives are scary, folks. No matter how good you are at what you do. I know people watch martial arts videos and they see people dealing with knives with ultimate. You're going to get cut. You're going to get stabbed. You're going to get hurt. You might even die, even if you know what you're doing. So as much as I understand that there's these dangers, it saddens me to see that for the most part, people will tend to film these events rather than step in and actually take action against the person. That doesn't happen in the Medinas of Marrakesh or Tangier. If you steal something and you're caught, the entire neighborhood comes out and whoops your ass. And that's why there's very little of it in those scenarios. It's a little bit off point, Michael, but I want to say this event has charged the political right to start charging this guy on federal crimes now, taking it out of the state's hands, and now putting this guy in the hands of the feds so that they can, make sure that, quote unquote, he's not in the hands of leftist prosecutors who are going to be soft on crime. So again, they're taking over states' responsibilities and taking this guy under the federal wing to make sure he gets more punishment. Also, the right-wing media, like the Steven Crowder types, and I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene that you sent me, are now starting to make it about a racial thing. Because we all know that the mainstream media underreports certain types of crimes and overreports other types of crimes for the sake of ginning up probably views, but also controversy, and that ends up stirring up a lot of problems. Now, so the rumors are going around that the guy said he killed her because he killed that white girl, and so the right-wing guys are trying to make it seem like it was a racially motivated event. There doesn't seem to be any evidence that supports that. I think that the guy would have probably attacked anybody who was vulnerable sitting in front of him, regardless of their race. He was unhinged. And that leads us to other potential conversations about what should be done about the mentally ill, because he was certainly mentally ill. Michael, what do you got to say about this whole shenanigans?
Well, there's so many angles. Kat Sterling pointed out the bystander effect, and immediately Ian Gilmore correctly points out that the bystander effect has been exaggerated. Years ago, Brent McCall and I actually wrote 2 papers, one criticizing the Milgram experiments and the other criticizing the bystander effect. But I do think that that's part of it. I also think, it's very easy to criticize people for not getting involved when you're not facing the situation, right? This is a shock to the system. You don't know what's going on. You don't know the relationship between the two people. You have no clue. It's very bewildering. In prison, if an inmate has a knife and goes after another inmate, I was shocked when I found this out. But when I first got in jail, a guy told me, when they see a guy with a knife, the staff don't charge the guy. They leave him alone, right? Unless they can really, really overpower him. So I don't want to get into the criticizing of the bystanders too much. But what strikes me is the absolute, and this really grosses me out, when people use stuff like this, an obvious tragedy, horrific tragedy, and they use it to promote their agenda. So on one hand, we got to get tough on crime agenda. Look, this guy was let out of jail. He had so many charges. I agree he should have been put away. Like, he shouldn't have been on the street. That I agree with. That does not mean we're in the middle of a crime epidemic.
Well, does that mean that you would have agreed that you now disagree with the judge who made him just sign a paper that committed him to showing up to court, as opposed to placing bail on him?
No. I'm talking about even before that. Once he had committed multiple violent crimes, he should have been given stiffer sentences, right? I don't have an issue with that. I just think it's very easy to make the world look different than what it is if you're watching television or you're watching social media. And there's people out there that really want to convince you that the world is, the United States is this dangerous place. And I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother, not even a kid, 18, 19 years old, all she did was lay in bed and watch television. And I would be going out, and she would make sure you lock the doors, make sure the windows are up. Like, she was horrified because all she did was watch the news, and the news was filling her mind with this stuff, and she's not getting a realistic picture. And that happens a lot too. And you've got people now that are putting this picture like it's in their profile picture on Facebook. Everybody's posting the video. They're talking about it. I've seen it said that we're at war, that, this is a war on white people. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, actually, she said something. I don't remember what it was.
Well, there's also somebody named Sherry you sent me a check mark. Iryna Zarutska's killer said, "I got that white girl. I got that white girl." Girl, because the war on whites and
yes, she said that,
fighting it.
Yes. Okay. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, this was an entirely racially motivated killing. Now, he's assaulted his sister in the past, who I'm guessing, because he's black, is also black. He's had a domestic relationship where there was a domestic assault. I don't know what the race of that person was. He's obviously not right upstairs. And like Ray says, that doesn't excuse his behavior. but nonetheless, we know. But even for the sake of argument, let's say that he's a racist. The idea that there's a war on whites. So I did some searching this morning, and I sent you the information. White people are far more likely to be assaulted by another white person than they are by a black person. I think it's almost twice as likely. Then, even with black on white crime,
which goes the other way, by the way, it tends to be that racial groups assault one another,
right? Which makes sense because that's who they're around, right? But even in the case of black on white crime, the chances of it being racially motivated, it's estimated at like 1 in 7,000, right? This is as horrible as this was, right? And it was terrible. I agree. It's not an epidemic of blacks just acting like wild animals wanting to kill whites in the street. That's just not occurring. And there's people out there that are making it seem like that. I can't tell you all the posts I'm seeing about how blacks are more violent. Blacks have lower IQs. Blacks this, blacks that. The interesting thing to me about this is one guy, because I made a post today and I said, look, racial tribalism is not the answer. And one guy, evidently aware of who I am, says to me, yeah, we'll tell that to the guys in prison. And I'm just like, dude, I'm thinking you should really know who you're talking to before you make comments. I said 25 years in prison. That was never the case, not once, right? The other thing is another guy told me that I'm unwilling to speak up about black on white racism or problems in the black community. Okay, I spent a considerable amount of time arguing with black murderers about these issues, telling them that, I thought that blacks were more racist than whites, for instance, that there was something wrong with hip hop culture, inner city black culture. I did this face to face with dangerous people, not behind the safety of a pseudonym and a keyboard. Right. So when people are telling me, oh, I'm just denying it or I don't want to speak on it, it's absolutely absurd. And I do agree with, Scott Schiff says making anti-white statements is more culturally acceptable today. I agree with that, too. None of that means
even some of the violence that's been highlighted where white people were attacked for being white, especially after the COVID madness and during the George Floyd madness. I mean, there was a period of time where there was a social contagion that was nuts. That's not the case, statistically speaking. We're saying statistics, folks, because that's the broad reality. Right now, the politicians like to focus on the incendiary, crazy thing that's going to get you reacting emotionally. And from that emotional reaction, they're able to expand their power that much more. But you need to know these events are taking place in a full context. And that's the context we're trying to provide for you now.
Yeah. So I think that this is horrible, but I think that there's a lot of dishonest people out there trying to use this to further their own agenda. And that really sickens me. This is a very dangerous thing. There's people that are of both races that are mentally ill out there that are watching this stuff. And people are just fueling that nonsense. And it's just absolutely obscene in my view. I really hope that cooler heads prevail on this issue. This war on whites thing really got my dander up this morning because somebody said, oh, you don't think affirmative action is a war on whites? So then I responded to him and I said, okay, well then was Jim Crow a war on blacks? Was the Tulsa Massacre a war on blacks? Was Plessy v. Ferguson a war on blacks? And he comes back to me and says, oh, those things are more complicated. And I said, yes, of course they are. Of course they are. And I told him, listen, dude, my philosophy and my worldview, when dealing with black friends of mine and black guys that aren't friends of mine, I've never allowed them in conversation to play the victim card with me. I sure as hell am not going to let a bunch of white dudes on the internet play the victim card with me. You know what I mean? All my life, I heard that from Republicans and conservatives, how blacks needed to take responsibility for their lives. And I agreed that they couldn't use poverty and couldn't use the past as excuses for their behavior. And I agreed. But now we have the right that wants to play the victim themselves. And it's really, really gross to me. I really hate it.
Yeah. Welcome to the culture wars in the 21st century, folks. It's horrible. Rahazam says it's the social media effect. If you open an app and each shows you essentially the same thing that is a feature of your algorithm, and the barometer of how things are is to go outside and observe. Right. The barometer is to really go and look at the world, folks, not to keep your nose stuck in social media, which is more and more just seems like the purpose of it is to just keep you at an elevated level, to keep your cortisol levels high, and to keep you somehow engaged by mixing and matching the worst possible elements. Deep Root Diego says social media. Wait, there was something else that Deep. Like I always said, social media is not real life. People, take one example, it's popular. It thus must be everywhere. That's true as well.
I think so, but I agree that it makes things seem more prevalent. But I also think that when you're talking about these social media influencers and politicians out there, these people have millions of followers, millions. When millions of people are paying attention to this stuff and start to believe it, it becomes dangerous. So just listen to a couple of the responses that I got from my Jim Crow question. One guy says, if Jim Crow was so bad, why didn't all the blacks hop on a bus and go to Chicago or Detroit?
It's called the Great Migration.
Well, first of all, a lot did. First of all, a lot did. Migration. Right. Secondly, I'd like to tell anybody that just get up and move. Well, go move. It's an easy thing to do.
Especially when you're living on a sharecropper's existence. You have absolutely no funds.
It's so stupid.
You're in debt. You're in debt literally to the sharecropper who's a crooked son of a bitch, and he's stealing you for everything. You have no material means to get out of there. So some people really couldn't move, but those that could did. It's called the Great Migration. I hope you educated him on that.
So this other guy says, first he says, top companies prioritize hiring non-whites, top universities prioritize non-whites, movies prioritize non-white actors. If a white person kills a non-white, it's called racism. He goes on and on. Then he says over here, I'm really sick of all the race crap. Right? He says these things are all things from 60 or 100 years ago. Anyone back then who was an adult would be 80 or older now. Anyone, right? So he says, I'm bringing up things that are happening now. Well, the problem is that things don't exist in a vacuum. And again, I'm giving nobody excuse for bad behavior, none. But to suggest that things that happened 60 or 80 years ago have no effect today, it's just ridiculous. I mean, if you're a black person and you know about the Tuskegee experiments, the Tulsa race massacres, Jim Crow laws, all types of, what was it? Convict leasing, slavery, all these things. And you're knowledgeable about this. You're telling me that the idea that you might be discriminated against in this country is ridiculous? No, I think it's a legitimate fear. I don't think it's a legitimate excuse. I just don't understand. Like, we have this idea, it seems, Mark, not you and me, but a lot of people, that it's either you say you accept every excuse for bad behavior as a result of racism, or you just say it's not a problem and it's not happening. And it's just not true.
But see, Michael, unfortunately, there's an element in here that complicates everything, and that's the race hucksters that have come in and taken advantage of the past to sow chaos in the present tense. Al Sharpton being one of the main guys, who the guilty white media gives tons of credit to. They give this guy multi-million-dollar jobs, and they make him an authority on the black community, and he is a shyster of the first degree. And this is a guy who's literally lied about white on black crime in order to promote.
Did he ever apologize for Tawana Brawley?
No, he never did. Never. To this day, as far as I know, he never apologized for Tawana Brawley, and continues to speak out as an authority. Now, to me, that's just those guilty white leftists who latch on to somebody with a narrative that makes them feel more guilty, and then they feel sort of reassured that they are following the proper narrative, because these guys are setting the narrative, and they are racists in their own right, and they're race hucksters in their own right.
Absolutely. And I think that you made the great point right here is that we ought not to be listening to the race hucksters on either side.
Correct.
Right. These folks have an agenda that is separate from the people who listen to them. These people are not trying to make peace. They're not trying to create a better world. They're trying to fill their pockets and increase their fame. These are not the people that we ought to be listening to. This was a horrific tragedy to return to North Carolina. It was absolutely grotesque. The guy that did it, in my view, because I'm not a fan of the death penalty, he should spend the rest of his life in a box with no television and no radio. Right. I have no problem with punishing that guy. I have no problem with saying he shouldn't have been let out of prison to begin with. That does not mean that we were on the verge of a race war or that our city streets are so dangerous that we cannot walk down them.
My only now, you know, I'm pro death penalty, but my only reservation in this case is that the man is diagnosed schizophrenic, and I don't know that he went into that bus with the intent to murder somebody on that day. Lots of people carry pocket knives around with them now as protection, particularly if they're homeless. And one of the things that you should worry about if you're confronting some of these people, folks, on any of these mass transport medias, is that they do oftentimes carry weapons for self-protection. It appeared to be a spontaneous act to me. That's what it appeared to be. And to me, that disqualifies him for the death penalty, but certainly life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, because he's a repeat offender, because he's mentally ill, and because he needs to be contained and away from innocent society. This case breaks my heart, Michael. I don't know if you saw the aftermath. Did you see any of the aftermath video?
I have not watched the video, Mark. I've not watched it. I even one time. I have no interest in watching the video.
But the poor woman curls up in a fetal position and she's crying. All right, after the assault, she doesn't even really know what's happening. Of course, she doesn't know that she's literally moments away from dying, and nobody around her is helping her. Even after I can understand. Look, there's a part of me that understands. Even as a martial artist, do I want to fuck with this guy with a knife? I'm going to get stabbed, and I may even get stabbed fatally. You know, even if you sort of know what you're doing or really know what you're doing, that's gonna probably happen. But the guy leaves the scene, and this woman is left alone on the bench with nobody tending to her, nobody trying to help her. That scares me even more. Right? It scares me even more. And I wonder how many of them even notice, with their faces buried into their cell phones, with their ear pods in. They might not even known what happened. I think it was people on another train that noticed that he was walking through the train and blood was dripping from the knife onto the floor, and they noticed the blood droplets and sort of followed the course back to the girl to finally try to help her. But nobody helped.
I've heard a guy did actually help, and my news says the same thing here.
No, that's what I'm saying. But I thought he followed the blood trail and went back to her and did try to render help to her. But I don't even know.
I'm not sure. Yeah. But they've said, but Persephone says the same thing. One guy helped, and Nicole Hingle says the same thing. I'm
talking about, guys, is not that the guy didn't come up and help eventually, but that she's sitting there for quite some time in a fetal position crying, and nobody's going up to her. Right?
I think so at that point, if somebody's noticing that, but I really am skeptical about the sort of guilting people in these circumstances for not helping, because you don't know. No. Yeah. I'm saying, but a lot of that is going on. Now, you've got people who may have families of their own. You know, is this person sitting there? Am I going to risk my life and leave my kids as an orphan so that I can interfere here where I have no idea what's going on? They're scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know what's happening. It's just, and look, I'm not saying that people shouldn't help. What I'm saying is that it's a lot easier for all these keyboard warriors to talk about what they would do than when you're actually there to do it. And I'll just give you two quick examples. I was working at Dunkin' Donuts when a little while after I got out, and there was a guy there, my boss, who was bullying an autistic girl who worked there. And it was enraging me. But this guy, his boss was his cousin. So if I went to complain, nothing was likely to happen. The girl had already complained about it and nothing had happened. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I hit this dude, I'm going back to prison, right? It's not going to alter his behavior. It's not going to change this girl. He's not going to get fired, right? And I'm just going through a whole thing in my mind. What should I do in this situation? I wanted to hurt this guy, but I also thought about my own life and well-being and what would come of it. A similar situation happened. I think I was at it was at one of these fairs, maybe the Big E. I think it was the Big E. And I was walking out with Melissa, and there was this guy screaming at his kid. And I wanted to intervene. But at the same time, what's that going to cost me? Now, I understand these situations are not the same as a woman being murdered, but neither was the danger to me the same as if I'm there. And again, if I go and intervene in that situation with the guy and his kid, the police are not going to take the kid away from him, likely. He's not going to change his behavior, but there's a very real chance that I end up back in jail. And that's just the type of calculus I was doing. So I'm very, like I said, I'm just very skeptical on trying to guilt people in these situations. And I see a lot of people doing that out there.
Yeah, there's no, folks, as this may not sound good for some folks, but there is no moral duty to help your fellow man in a situation like that. Particularly if you do not have a skill set that will enable you to render that help without really risking your own life and values. For example, if a child is drowning in a rushing river and you don't know how to swim very well or only moderately, you may want the child to be rescued, but you're under no moral obligation to save that child. As terrible as that may sound to many people who've adopted the sacrificial ethics, all you do is end up ending your own life while attempting to save somebody else. And the same thing is true with a knife-wielding maniac. I mean, even if you're good at martial arts, you could die in that situation. So it's quite understandable why you would want to maintain a distance from a person like that, or try to catch him when he's pocketed the knife and put it away, and then take him down before he knows what he's from behind. So before he knows what he's even doing, what's even happening. Certainly, but Michael, aside from that, I don't even think this moral calculus is going on in the minds of the people who are in these situations, especially people who are filming the problem that's happening. I mean, people on filming brutality, watching somebody get beat down and putting it on their social media as a form of, I don't know, entertainment. Those people are doubly worse because for them, there's no moral question for them at all. Anybody else, it's understandable. So, folks, I don't want to make it seem like we're on the bandwagon of people who say, well, you should do this. I've been in a lot of fights, man. I know, and Michael, you've been in a lot of really super sketchy situations. We both know what it's like to be in the crucible, man. And it's like, it's not for everybody. It's just simply not for everybody. And you're not wrong if you don't interfere. I mean, certainly you're wrong if you don't try to assist her after the fact and really try to get her medical attention and stop the bleeding and try to save her life. Because that's really at no cost to you at all, and it could potentially save her life. Anyway, Mike, this particular case has really got my goat, but not just because of the political reaction, just because she was so thin and so innocent and so alone, and it struck all my chords of vulnerability, all my sheepdog instincts.
And Mark, I think that's intentional. I think that the influencer who keep playing this video over and over again know that that's going to happen. This is a young, very pretty girl minding her business, and I think that the releasing of this and keep posting it over and over again is intentional. They're calling it a watershed moment. They're saying this is going to radicalize people. I just really hope it doesn't.
Yeah, so Race Jacobs says something that I don't necessarily agree with. I think some people film rather than intervene because it's better to gather evidence that leads to a conviction rather than risk your life. Okay, maybe some people do that, Race, but I think most people are filming it for the same reason that most people slow down and rubberneck a bad crash, because there's something in them that is it attracts them. It satisfies their prurient interest. And I don't think they're even thinking about gathering evidence for future court cases. I don't think they think that far in advance, to be honest with you. It's just become a thing.
Well, in fairness to Race, he did say some.
That's why I said some, yes.
Yeah, he said some.
But most, I don't think that's the case.
Persephone looks very concerned.
All right, Persephone.
She has a very concerned look on her face.
You need to come on and express why she's concerned.
No, she can just no. We don't need to embarrass her. She's shaking her head.
Okay. Is she concerned about something that I'm saying?
No. I think the whole story disturbs her. It's a very disturbing story.
It's a very disturbing story. It's been sticking in my mind for the past couple of days. It's really hard for me to lose it. Anyway, I think what Robert says, also see Ayn Rand's Ethics of Emergencies, but if you do, read it to the end, and the message is not when reason can't answer the question, anything goes. All right, folks. I mean, that story hurts me. That story really hurts me. And the racist response on the part of the right, with Steven Crowder saying this is the white people's George Floyd, is
I saw that too. Yes,
totally irresponsible of him. Even though he says, "Look, there's going to be no riots. There's going to be none of the things that happened after George Floyd. Just watch." It's a terrible thing to say. It's terribly irresponsible for somebody with such a huge platform to make those kinds of implications. And Charlie Kirk has even insinuated that the reason the guy killed her was because she was white, though there is no evidence to suggest that.
Oh, okay. I wanted to just clarify. So what Marjorie Taylor Greene says is hate crimes against white people have been ignored for too long.
Yeah, we have no evidence to suggest that this was a quote unquote hate crime, which I'm against the concept of hate crime anyway, but we have no evidence to suggest that this was specifically directed at a white person. He was a schizophrenic. He and one can easily presume, or as easily presume, that whoever sat in front of him who looked vulnerable and disengaged and weak might have fallen in the same way, regardless of what their ethnicity was. So this is a very troubling case, folks. Certainly, Michael, when I read Libertarian Manifesto, one of the things I took from it that I thought was absolutely insane was the fact that Rothbard didn't think that people who were adjudicated as crazy could or should be committed involuntarily. And that was something that really freaked me out about libertarianism, because to me it separated the concept of reason and the reason and rights, and the further you are from a fully rational mind, of course, the less quote unquote, I don't want to say rights, but the more your rights turn to child rights, wherein you need to be a ward of somebody who has a full capacity to reason. Right? You don't have full control over your faculties. You can't make decisions for yourself, and you need somebody who actually can guide your life or control it. So the fact that they endorse that people who have been adjudicated as legally insane cannot be involuntarily committed is one of the reasons why I think we have some of these nuts running around in the streets.
I got to differ with you here, Mark. The idea of legally adjudicated, first of all, insanity is not a psychological term; it's a legal term. But the idea that
means that somebody cannot fully appreciate the consequences.
Well, it means different things. There was the McNaughton test, and then there's another one that I can't quite remember it off the top of my head right now. There's different standards of it. I'm very skeptical of allowing doctors to judge somebody's mental state and use that as a reason to take that person off the street in the absence of a crime. If the person commits a crime, sentence them, give them due process, and put them in prison.
This is dear to my heart right now, only because I have a friend who went schizophrenic over the COVID lockdowns, and he has not come back. He's getting worse. He's getting more delusional, and his fantasies, I think, are going to lead him in a very violent direction. Now, his own mother is afraid of him. I think he might be staying with his brother at the moment, but he has it in for me and for some of his big actor friends who he thinks are on the social media platform trying to influence him to do terrible things to other people, and so far he's only been threatening legal action against us, but he's also murderously enraged. Like, he will leave us tapes of him talking or videotapes of him talking too, murderously enraged at us because he thinks we're part of this cabal that's trying to ruin his life. To me, there's only a matter of time before that ticking time bomb blows up and he crosses over into violent action. When that could have been saved had he been able to be committed. And because at this point he's been 5150 probably 5 times. He's been in jail for a couple of months.
But Mark, but what about the other side of the ledger? How many people are going to be judged to be not capable to live in society and locked up when they're innocent and haven't committed any crimes when they're actually not a danger?
Well, let's I mean, like a Rose Kennedy, for example, who had issues and they committed her against her will and they gave her a lobotomy. Was it Rose Kennedy? It's one of the Kennedy's children. One of the Kennedy's children. Those are tragedies that could happen, but if it goes through a due process, where like they have psychiatric courts in the basement.
But there's no objective tests, Mark. There's no objective test for mental illness. None.
Well, I don't know. They still have to. There must be some standard by which they can tell a person cannot appreciate the impact of their actions.
Predicting violence.
I certainly don't think my friend can appreciate.
Maybe not, but most, even schizophrenic, most are not committing violent offenses. And so how do you know? When do you judge that, okay, this person's going to do it? Yes, Minority Report, precogs. You simply don't know ahead of time. But look, I do want to talk about this issue, but we have to get to some other stuff too. So I think that maybe we can dedicate a whole show. We got to discuss a whole show about rights. I think this should make a whole show. This actually might make for a good topic on our show coming up.
Indeed. After we get from the personal stuff and we get to the more abstract social stuff, I think this would be a very good topic for conversation because
Persephone's playing with her hair, just so everyone knows.
Okay, does that mean she's bored?
No, she's just like doing, like that type of thing.
Okay, so folks, I got to talk about this, Michael, because I know you threw it out as red meat for me.
The Qatar thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So the Israeli military launched a surprise strike on Doha, Qatar on September 9th, intending to eliminate several political leaders of Hamas. As many of you may know, the people who are the actual masterminds of this entire fiasco we call the Gaza war are living in luxury in Doha. They live in palatial condominiums and apartments. They are all billionaires and, of course, produce no value. So you can imagine that they have made those billions by bilking the international community of aid, which is primarily what they do, preventing their own people, the Palestinian people, from getting that aid and building an independent state. Instead, they have directed those resources towards themselves and towards militarizing the entire state of Gaza for war. Now, as many of you know, Qatar played a role as a mediator to the ongoing Israeli-Hamas conflict, which I find paradoxical, given that they harbor the head terrorists of Hamas. Israeli strike comes as leaders of Hamas, an internationally designated terrorist organization, have been reviewing the latest U.S. proposal to secure the release of hostages the group took on October 7th, 2023, and to bring an end to the nearly 2 years of fighting in Gaza. I also disagree with any proposal by the defenders to the aggressors. This should not be happening, and yet it is. Here's what we know about the strike so far, folks. For years, members of Hamas leadership have led the terrorist organization's operations and are directly responsible for the brutal October 7th massacre and have been orchestrating and managing the war against the state of Israel. This is what the IDF has says. Shortly after the strike, Hamas issued a statement claiming 5 of its members were killed. I won't go over the names of those killed. They're too difficult to pronounce. But the Epoch Times, from which this article comes, cannot independently verify the casualties of the strike. Now, of course, this from what I understand, this strike was agreed to by President Trump, and of course, Trump has come out talking out of both sides of his mouth that he shouldn't be attacking a sovereign country, but by the same token, you have to get Hamas. Michael, I have a real issue with. First of all, I agree with the strike in Doha. I think it should have happened a long time ago. I think the leaders of Hamas should have been taken out a long time ago, as as the leaders of Hezbollah were taken out in Iran. I'm perfectly fine with that. Any country that harbors these kinds of terrorists, in my view, loses its capacity to call itself a sovereign state. Indeed, its government, if it's authoritarian, I don't know the nature of the government in Qatar, but if it is indeed an authoritarian state, I don't think it has any claims on sovereignty at all. And a free state can indeed invade it, and particularly when it comes to taking these murderous terrorist masterminds and taking them out and giving them their reservation for 72 virgins. I have no problem with this. Of course, the international community is up in arms and claiming that Israel is attacking a sovereign state. Saudi Arabia has gone insane. The rest of the Arab world is going insane about this attack. Although privately, I have to say, I think many of them posture publicly against Israel while privately hoping and praying that the Israelis win this war and defeat the Palestinians. I've seen it. I've actually seen letters written by people high up in the Saudi world who have said privately, we are rooting for the Israelis to win this war. And there's no other way to win the war than to take out Hamas entirely. And that includes the billionaire leadership, kleptocracy that has been allowed to live in Qatar. Now, Qatar, Turkey, no place should be safe for these people. From here on out, they should know that their lives, the time on this earth is limited. And Michael, it was a Mossad operation, which similar to the one that they did in Iran, where the Mossad called them all together to be in this particular place for some kind of negotiation, similarly to what they did with Iran when they got all the Hezbollah guys in one area. It was a Mossad operation, an operative pretending to be somebody else to get them all in that one space where they could blow them up. What say you about this, Michael?
I'm woefully ignorant about Qatar, although a lot of people do a lot of talking about their influence in America and that sort of thing. The only thing I would say, though, is I remember after 9/11, when in Afghanistan, the Taliban was harboring bin Laden. And that was the reason that we went and attacked Afghanistan. And I don't regret approving of that attack. I regret approving it, giving the way that it was ultimately fought. But it's hard for me to see, well, if Qatar is harboring the people that are helping plan attacks on Israel, I don't see why Israel doesn't have the right to take them out.
Exactly. And I think any rational person would agree with that. If there's somebody, particularly an objectivist in the audience, who disagrees with that, please put that in the comments, and Persephone will put it in our private chat so I can see it. Catherine Cascio, this is sort of reverts to our last topic, Michael, but I wanted to say
Cascio,
not
not Cascio.
Sorry.
And she's your friend. You should know this.
Catherine, sorry.
Do you tell people I'm Michael Liebowitz when I'm not around?
Sometimes I do.
That's sick.
Okay. I also call myself Mark Pellegrino from time to time. So, Catherine, I'm not going to mention your last name because I always fuck it up, Kathy. I'm so sorry.
It's Cascio. It's easy. Say it. Cascio. There you go.
Kathy Cascio. Until he commits a crime, he should not be locked up. Yes, I do agree with you. And look, going back to this guy, he did his time for these crimes. And like we said when we touched on this yesterday, this is an unfortunate tragedy because really, I don't know that there could have been much else that could have been done about this guy, unless you have laws where the criminally insane and the paranoid schizophrenic can be locked up for the safety of the community and for their own safety.
Hey, how about the Congresswoman? And this is my way of getting you to talk about the story I sent you that I want, because I sent you a lot this morning. Well, how about the Congresswoman who says that the role of law enforcement is not to prevent crime?
Okay. So, yeah. So
to solve crime.
Yeah. So this was terrible. Jasmine Crockett, who is
That's who that is?
yes, Jasmine Crockett.
Okay.
Well, she's trying to make a name for herself in left wing politics right now, and she's sort of the star. She's sort of taking over for where the squad left off. I don't know if she's considered part of the squad, but she's certainly becoming a spokesperson for the Democratic Party's position on lots of things. Now, she was on, was it CNN? No, she was on. Oh, it looks like a Fox News thing where she's on a panel and she says something to the effect of, you go ahead and talk about what
she says that the purpose of law enforcement is to solve crimes, not to prevent them. And the guy that posted this video, he gives perfect examples about, well, so if they arrive on the scene of a school shooting, they're just supposed to sit there and wait until it's over and then solve it. Of course not. They're going to get in there and prevent it. And the whole thing is that the purpose of solving crimes, at least one of them, is to be a deterrent to other people committing crimes. So of course they're there to prevent crime. I can't even believe that this idiot said this. Well, I guess I can, because they say a lot of dumb things.
Yeah, this is
unlike us here at the Capitalist Corner. We always say smart things. At least I do.
And folks, even though we are not affiliated with the American Capitalist Party, you should go to americancapitalistparty.org. You should click the donate button, become a member, be a part of the change. You should also like and subscribe to this station, please. And
share it from YouTube. And I hope you did today, Mark. I hope you shared it from YouTube.
Guilty as charged. No,
oh my God,
I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I went to YouTube and
did what?
Okay, here's what happened.
Oh no.
At the risk of revealing myself,
this sounds like a bad joke. I went to YouTube. Okay, so Mark Pellegrino walks into YouTube.
Right. And then, so I'm like, I'm going to see what Michael needs me to do here. I'm going to share this from YouTube. Oh, what I did though, I subscribed, number one, because I was not subscribed.
Oh my God.
What? That's good.
What do you mean you weren't subscribed? We've been on for months.
I didn't know.
Yeah, but you say it every day. You tell everybody to subscribe.
But I didn't know that I wasn't subscribed, so I subscribed.
How did you not know?
Don't ask questions like that. It's going to force me to look.
Why? I can't handle the truth.
It's going to make me look more silly. So I hit the subscribe button, and then I was like, how do I share this? Yes, and I saw the share button, but I got confused mid.
What did you get confused about?
I don't know, Michael.
It says share. You click share, and when you click share, it comes to Facebook. There's a thing to share it on X. You could send it in mail. There's all types of options.
So now that I am a subscribed member of our own show, which I encourage everybody else to do, and now I can say with total commitment, because I am subscribed like you. Please subscribe and like it. And
share it from YouTube.
And today I will share it from YouTube. Rahasam says, if they meant prevent in the authoritarian manner by behavioral regulations, etc., yes. But in the stop the bad when it's happening sense, no, she's wrong. That's interesting. I mean, so there is a sense in which Trump is using crime as an excuse to expand.
Oh, sure.
Power,
yeah.
And then to, expand the police force as a sort of preemptive strike against crime. But Michael, I got to tell you, whenever I go to Paris, one of the most disconcerting things for me to see is a militarized police walking in groups of 7 or 8 with automatic weapons strapped across their chests, like they own the block. Most Americans should have a real antipathy for that kind of display of the power of the state. That's not cool. Yeah, maybe some terrorist or some crazy person will think twice about attacking me because there's 8 commandos standing there.
I'd rather have the freedom than the safety. But this is an interesting suggestion here for you. But I want to get to the Reason magazine article before we go out. But Manu has an interesting suggestion. She says to you, fuck a lot of typos. Now, why she would want you to do that, I don't know. But it's interesting, to say the least.
What?
Read what she says. She says, fuck a lot of typos. I don't know why. I don't even know how you could do such a thing. But that's her recommendation.
Fuck a lot of typos.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know, but that's what she's into. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Can we get to the Reason magazine thing?
Why don't you pull it up? Because I'm looking for it at the moment.
Oh, my goodness.
You go ahead and pull it up. Oh, here's what you're talking about. Here's what would happen if we seized all the wealth of America's 800 billionaires.
Yes.
All right. So, okay, Michael, I want you to talk about this. Folks, here's what would happen if we seized all the wealth from America's 800 billionaires. Go ahead.
Well, it wouldn't pay off the debt. Like it would pay off, I think.
You're
it would,
kidding me.
Yeah, it would pay off the debt, I believe they said, for 9 months. And not 9 months every year, 9 months just one time. And then that's not a solution. And they got into how people will claim Europe, they have these high taxes, but evidently their taxes are less progressive than ours in terms of taxing the rich. Europe taxes the middle class, which we have no appetite for over here. So basically the thrust of the article is that you cannot tax your way out of the problem that we now have. Although unfortunately the author of the article, whose name was not Arthur, but she says that, taxes should be part of it when we're trying to balance the budget. And I say codswallop. It's a spending problem, not a problem of low taxes. Get rid of the spending and cut taxes.
Now, good luck with that, folks, since over 50% of the people in the United States are in some way and shape or form dependent upon the federal government. Either they work for the government or they are dependent on subsidies from the government. Roosevelt, I guess, knew what he was doing when he was extending the New Deal and political patronage across the states and making the states dependent upon the federal government for money. And Trump is trying to leverage that to get the states to do what he wants to do. I wish he would just cut off all the funding to the states, period. I wish it was not. I wish state senators and congresspeople were not allowed to fatten bills with special subsidies for their districts, because what this amounts to, folks, is a spoiled system democracy where a congressman gets elected because he says, I'm going to go to Washington and I'm going to get you the most shit. I'm going to bring home stuff to you. And that is considered a successful politician by today's day and age, as opposed to a capitalist politician, which would not be bringing home stuff to the region he represented. He would be protecting the region's property rights and expanding the individual's capacity to use and keep their property and to develop and innovate, understanding that that would make his community far richer than all of the restraints and political largesse that he could bring home from Washington. Mike, there's no real will on the part of the people to take out these programs. You see conservatives and leftists alike saying, don't touch my Social Security, don't touch my Medicare. So it's like, people, you're gonna have a rude awakening, because at the moment Trump is trying to have his cake and eat it too, and any objectivist knows that's impossible. Why? Because A is A. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. It's impossible. You cannot have these programs that are bankrupting the nation and at the same time have prosperity. You simply can't. You have to cut them down. Like, it has to be now. I mean, we're in a situation, Michael, $37 trillion.
Wait, hold on 1 second, because Manu is leaving, and I'm just hoping before she goes, she's going to tell us who these people are, the typos. I want to know who they are before she goes. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's very important. We have to find out who they are. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, the cutting has to have started yesterday. The one big beautiful bill that they're now trying to rename because it's so obnoxious in the ears of almost everybody out there. They're trying to rename it the way the Democrats like to name things, right? Like the Affordable Care Act, in an Orwellian sense, where, if it says, if the government's saying something is affordable, it's absolutely inaccessible now.
Yes.
So they're trying to do that. They're trying to repackage and rebrand it to make it more palatable to the American people, because the American people are getting less fooled by this nonsense. But it should have started with that bill, and it should have started with across the board actual cuts. We're talking about probably 15% cuts, which would be considered draconian, and probably what did they call it in Europe when they had these they had the massive cuts for a while. The draconian cuts in social welfare.
Oh, no.
They would call it austerity.
Austerity, yeah.
We need to be in austerity mode with respect to the government, and they need to be cutting regulation like mad, not just piecemeal, not just as a suggestion. It needs to be a full-on commitment to taking out some of these alphabet soup agencies and these thousands of bureaucrats who have also crossed the checks and balances line, folks, because they now propose legislation and they execute the legislation, and now they adjudicate their own legislation. So even though there's now been a Supreme Court ruling that has pushed away from that, they are the people who are clearly the underbelly of Washington that needs to be taken out. Michael, we are a little past time, so you have to give the capitalist thought for the day, and I don't think Manu will come with her spell check thing for you.
No, well, it's just an answer to a question. She can tell us at a later date. I'm sure somebody will let her know. Also, I just want to compliment you on the rash guard you're wearing today. It's very nifty. But so the capitalist thought of the day is going to be on reason and emotion, folks. In order to maintain a free society, to live in a free society, a capitalist society, it has to be a society whose dominant culture is guided by reason. That doesn't mean that emotion doesn't have a place. Emotion is great. It makes life worth living. It makes life in many ways what it is. It is not, however, a means of gaining knowledge or of learning right from wrong. And especially in times of emotional upheaval, when for whatever reason we're extremely angry or sad or whatever, however you run the gamut of emotions, wherever we stand, those are the times when we need to slow down, take a deep breath, and use our minds, because that is when we are most prone to mistakes. So what we need to do is listen to Mark Pellegrino, check our premises, see why we're upset, see if it's justifiable upsetness, if that's a word, and then we need to use our minds to make our decisions. That's all I have to say, Mark. And with that, I turn it over to you, and we'll move on.
Thank you very much for that very thoughtful capitalist thought of the day, folks. You have 23 hours to check your premises. It looks like the people in the chat pretty much agree with us, but I'm sure there's a commie or two out there hiding in the shadows. I'm hoping that whatever we said here will spark curiosity for you to read Mises, to read Ayn Rand, and to get away from the poison of Marx and into, well, this beautiful rational world that we aspire to here at Capitalist Corner. So remember to visit AmericanCapitalistParty.org. Remember to like and subscribe. Remember to share from YouTube to other platforms, which is going to be my job today. Tomorrow, Michael, I am traveling, but I think the car picks me up a little late, so I think I'll be able to work for the first half hour, 45 minutes of the show, I think. But I'll tell you.
Mighty whitey, Mark.
All right, folks, we'll be here same bat time tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Until that time, folks, happy premise checking. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.